Salam.
Brothers and sisters, seeking knowledge is an obligation for all of us as Muslims. And in Salam Islamic Center, we carry that as a responsibility on our shoulders. And whenever we have any type of opportunity for speakers, we invite them here to learn from them. And tonight we have Brother Ahmed Rehab from Chicago. Brother Ahmed Rehab is an accomplished professional with a focus on public relations, community activism, and writing, particularly in the area of American Muslim affairs. He currently serves as the executive director of the CAIR Chicago, largest Muslim civil liberties and advocacy group in the United States. Brother Ahmed Rehab is a renowned writer and speaker on contemporary social issues, including civil rights, media relations, and Islam and West relations. He frequently lectures at universities nationwide. As a sought-after commentator, he appears on local TVs and cable news programs and is interviewed by major publications. Brother Rehab is also known for his efforts in fostering positive relations between communities and law enforcement. Before joining CAIR in 2004, he worked as a freelance speaker and writer, and earlier as a consultant at Arthur Andersen. Brother Ahmed Rehab's commitment to interfaith dialogue led him to roles with organizations like the Niagara Foundation in Chicago, with academic qualifications in software engineering and psychology. Brother Rehab is dedicated to promoting unity and understanding among diverse communities. He actively participates in various boards and initiatives emphasizing the importance of our shared humanity. Please help me welcome Brother Ahmed Rehab for tonight's program.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May Allah's blessings and peace be upon you all. And thank you very much for having me and for coming out on this Friday night to spend some time with us. Thank you to the Salam Islamic Center administration, my dear brother who's been very kind and hospitable. It is a pleasure to be here. This topic is a bit vague, but there's so many directions we can take on how to approach the topic of, are you proud to be Muslim and American, or the intersectionality of being Muslim and American. The experience of Muslims in America is such a large topic of conversation. What I would like to talk about here is how those seemingly two different identities are not in contradiction to one another when it comes to our ultimate goal of raising strong families and becoming productive human beings in this particular society. For the longest time, particularly post 9/11, there has been a narrative in the news, in politics, and political discourse that has seeped into Main Street, where average Americans began to believe this narrative that Islam and Muslims are antithetical to the American way, are a threat to the American way, or at the very least are a contradiction, an anathema, something that cannot integrate fully and in a healthy manner in this American society. At the same time, quite frankly, there have been many Muslim immigrants who have come from certain parts of the world with that same mentality, actually, who have believed themselves without any pressure from the outside that they're being Muslim, that they being immigrants from certain societies, they can never integrate, can never really become American, or at least be proud to be American, because there is a level of shame in that. And there's a level of contradiction to their values in that, according to that understanding. Excuse me. So both of these narratives, whether spun by Islamophobes or spun by certain Muslims coming from certain parts of the world and certain cultures, they both arrive at that same faulty conclusion, in my opinion. And we'll talk about why I have that opinion. Let's begin with some definitions. So we're talking here about Muslim identity and American identity. Well, what's Muslim identity? So if we assume, let's begin by saying what Muslim identity is not. If we believe that Muslim identity is something that is inherently tied down to a particular time and a particular place or both, then yes, there would be a contradiction. But in fact, Islam is truly timeless, in the sense that it applies all time. It was meant for human beings to be applied anywhere equally. Islam was never meant to be practiced in the 7th century only, or in a better way than later, nor was it meant to be practiced in a more holistic way or in a more full way in Saudi Arabia, or was the Arabian Peninsula before that, whatever name it had, whatever empire, whatever kingdom, or South Asia, or anywhere else in the world, Turkey, versus, say, Norway or Germany or Australia. This is all God's earth. This is all Allah's creation. And time belongs to God, all of it. And Allah willed that human beings be present at a certain point in time and point in space. This is not a coincidence, it's not a mistake. It's the design of Allah. So the first mistake that is made is tying Islam down as an identity to a time and a place. And so people who come from certain parts of the world, let's name some names, that's not a problem. Immigrants from the Arab world, immigrants from Pakistan or India, immigrants from Indonesia or Iran, immigrants from Turkey or Bosnia, whatever it is, who come and who present Islam not in its pure fashion, but as the interpretation that was had in that time and place that they come from. And they say this is Islam. So for you to become a Muslim, you have to have an element of Arab culture. You have to have an element of Pakistani culture. You have to take with Islam my comfort zone, even though it's not yours. And if you're uncomfortable with it, you're not a good Muslim. That is so unfair. And there's such a misunderstanding of Islam. It's okay, by the way, if you're comfortable in a Turkish cultural context. That doesn't make you less of a Muslim. You need to understand that it's okay if someone else is not, so long as the pure aspects of the religion are applied. They can be applied on any cultural context. So here we are in America with its specific, realities. It's a specific context. Why can't Islam port itself in a healthy manner to be a full American experience without losing any of its basic, pure, fundamental, core values? That question is important. Now, immediately in your mind, you're thinking, well, that can't happen. Excuse me. If you are, it's probably because, again, you're defining America in my opinion, as faulty a fashion as we define Muslim identity. We look to certain things that are popular in America, and we think they're inherently American. And that was part of the reason why all these immigrant communities in the past, those who did, not everybody, stayed away from being fully American, is because they made that same mistake. They looked and they said, there's drinking in America. Drink is American. There is gratuitous sex on television in America. That is American. There's drugs. And now there's all this gender stuff and all this other stuff in schools. That's American. So for me to protect myself from this stuff that I don't agree with, I can't be American. That's a mistake in the definition of what American is. America is many things. America is a pluralistic society. America has many different currents of thought, of behavior. No one current can claim to be uniquely, inherently, and exclusively American versus another. For us to concede the American identity to someone else is to allow someone else to define what it means versus us. Why can't I define what it means to be American? I'm an American. I'm talking technically. I have the citizenship. If you have the citizenship, you're American. There's no other definition for that by the law. Per the law, that's it. So once you're an American by law, culturally speaking, what prevents me from influencing this society to be a better society per values that I believe are good for humanity, and to call that American? And this applies to anything. You have to truly believe it. I remember part of my work, as was described, as a civil rights activist running CAIR Chicago, the Council on American-Islamic Relations. And in the early days when Islamophobia was really strong, you couldn't miss it. turn on the television and any random news headline probably would be about Islam and Muslims. Is Islam a violent religion? And they bring people to debate that question. In that environment, which has since passed, we're not in that same place anymore, alhamdulillah. There are still issues, of course. There's discrimination. There's still hate crimes. There's still trouble. But we're past that sort of top of the hill when it comes to this organized and institutional Islamophobia. But back when we were in the middle of it, I remember going against one of the most infamous Islamophobes, in my opinion, the right-wing commentator and anchor of a Fox News show by the name of Bill O'Reilly. For some, that might ring a bell. For others, it's a history that you might not be aware of. But this person was extremely popular on the right wing for conservatives, Christian conservatives. And he, like many at the time, had a thing against Islam. And I remember debating him, and at some point, he intimated, meaning he suggested or implied, that I was less American than him. And I remember telling him, I said, I'm no less American than you. This skin color is no less American than your skin color. This name, Ahmed, and I said it with a ha, is no less American than your name, Bill. I mean, think about it. Somebody came from Ireland. That's somewhere else. Ireland is somewhere else. And he came here, this family, the father, the mother. And Bill came about later. How is that different from how I came? So why would I concede that coming from, all due respect to Ireland, I love Ireland, I've been to Dublin, beautiful place, but all due respect to any European country or any country where people who are white Americans believe that they have some uniqueness to America because they were born here generations ago, how is that different from coming from anywhere else? And why would that name be American but not this name? If we both have the American citizenship, we both contribute, we both pay taxes, I don't get a tax discount because my name is not Bill or Bob or John or Jim. Do you get a tax discount? You don't. So if you don't get a tax discount, why would you get a citizenship discount or an identity discount or a right to the country discount? You will not be a second-class citizen, officially or unofficially, unless you accept it upon yourself. So the first step is to understand there is no single definition of Americanness other than what people bring about due to their hard work, effort, their thought process, and it's open for anyone to bring their values, their thoughts, their contributions to the table. This is why in the same country, we have the liberal, progressive trend and current, and we have the conservative, traditionalist trend and current, and you have many others. You have so many religions, so many races, but politically and culturally, there are various, very American, both are considered quite American. One isn't un-American. So there is no exclusivity. And here I am now as a Muslim, and I've established that Islam is fluid enough to be applied and to become anything in terms of the place and the time, to be fully at home in any time and any place is what I'm saying here. Because its values are not tied to one time or one place. So if we've established that, then what prevents Islam from taking its normal, comfortable home in this new land, as it did once upon a time in any other land? You know, I come from Egypt originally. Egypt didn't come Muslim out of the box. It was something else. Some Muslims came to Egypt, and over time, they made their contributions. And now, for many centuries, Egypt and Turkey is the same thing, and parts of China, et cetera, et cetera. So nothing is in, if there can be a Chinese Islam, if there can be a Turkish Islam, if there can be an Egyptian Islam, why can't there be an American Islam? And when we put it this way, I'm not saying it's a different religion. I'm not saying every country or every culture has its own brand or its own, interpretation of the religion. The core is the same. But where cultural applies, there is room for this religion to deal with the challenges of that time and place. So I don't want to bring in my dawah the way to deal with small issues that are prime in a small village in Afghanistan while I'm speaking to an American audience. Meanwhile, issues that apply to large metropolitan cities in America that Islam can absolutely address but maybe I can't because I don't come from that part of the world or that society. I don't want to limit Islam to say, oh, it can't deal with this. This is an American problem. Astaghfirullah. Is that what the Prophet did? Is that what the Sahaba did? Islam is a bold religion. And it's bold because it cares about humanity in all of its mess. Recently, I was approached by the media. In a typical story, we have this big building in the middle of downtown Chicago called Medina Temple, but that's what they call it. And it was built by the Shriners, who are a group of people who, kind of like the Masons, the Freemasons, they were in Saudi Arabia doing whatever charitable work back, 100 years ago. And when they came back to the United States, they were impressed by the culture of Saudi Arabia. So they built certain lodges or buildings that they used for their activities in the tradition of that culture, which meant Islamic calligraphy. And it looked like a masjid, basically. And they called it Medina Temple. But it had nothing to do with Islam, nothing to do with religion. So that building, I remember passing by it years ago and being impressed. I was like, this is like a beautiful masjid right in the middle of Chicago. But it wasn't. It was a Nordstrom. At that time, it was sold to Nordstrom, a chain store, department store. It was no longer a lodge for them. Before that, it was a circus. They actually had a children's circus. Before that, they used to record symphonies and orchestra symphonies because it had a beautiful sound to it. The point is, it was never a masjid. So today, or recently, they decided to sell it to a casino. Excuse me. And it was a temporary sell, meaning it wasn't really sold. It was kind of rented for a period of time until the casino has its own space. So the media contacts me, but before the media contacts me, I get hundreds of messages from Muslims who are angry. How can such a building with Islamic calligraphy or Quranic text on it be used as a casino? Now, 30 years ago, this would have been a typical case that would have, I think, riled up Muslims. And it started to. But I want to take a different approach. We're in a different time. So let's think about this. Do we want to continue to be the religion of symbolism? Is this what angers you most about this situation? First of all, this calligraphy that's on the door of this building is not Quranic text. So there's been, as usual with us sometimes, when we get emotional about something, misinformation, lack of research, lack of fact-checking. This place was never a mosque. There was this viral video. This mosque converted to a casino, big story, emotional. Muslims should, protest, should be angry, should do something about it. It was never a mosque. It's not Quranic text. The words on the door is La ghaliba illallah, which comes from the doors of Alhambra in Andalusia, Al-Andalus, which simply mean in English, there is no winning without God. I said that's a great message to put to somebody who's about to go in and gamble. That's a great reminder. I have no problem with that. Why are you so angry? It's not a masjid. It's not Quranic text. It's a public PSA that's a great one, put at the right time in the right place. I have no problem with it. And I wanted to put it this way to challenge my own community. I could have put it simpler, but I want to put it in the language of I don't have a problem with it. Because the next part is more important. I said I have a problem with gambling and what it does to communities in America. As a Muslim, you're offended by this text being on this wall at this moment in time. I'm offended by human beings, flesh and blood, whose lives are being ruined by this predatory, addictive disease called gambling that targets the poor more often than not, by the way. And as a Muslim, that's what I want to respond to. That's what I want to have a campaign against, regardless which building it's in and regardless what text is on the door. This text is actually a good reminder for them. Now, the interesting thing is our community, including the most conservative, the most traditionalist, the newest immigrants, they all thought about it and said, that's interesting, we agree. They came to terms with it. The imams, everybody, alhamdulillah. We need to lead in a new direction. We need to remember That this religion isn't about being all uptight and hurt that the Quran was burnt. That's a symbolic gesture. It's an ugly, hateful, symbolic gesture where when it happens, the law should punish per the law, no problem. But I'm more offended when the content of this beautiful book is burnt by us in the sense of us not living it out, not sharing it truly and boldly and proudly and effectively with the world that needs it. That's the burning that hurts my feelings. I'm tired of the symbolism of people rioting and people dying because somebody drew a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Well, that's not the Prophet Muhammad. That's who they think the Prophet Muhammad is. So number one, it's not your prophet, and you should know that. It's a figment of this person's imagination. Secondly, it's a symbolic attack. It's not a substantive one. I'm more offended by those of us and others who deny the legacy of this man, of this prophet of God, to reach other human beings who need it all around us. So we have to remember this faith, and I now go to the core of my point. This faith is ultimately about values. And these values define this faith in every epoch, in every part of the world that this faith has existed. They remain the same. Islam says this about itself. When you read the Quran, when you understand the Hadith and the Seerah, it's always about these core values. The first being at-Tawheed, the oneness of God. And that's a value because from this belief, from this singular value comes many other values. If you believe that God is one, you believe God is in charge. If you believe God is in charge, you have nothing to fear. Now you become fearless, more values. God is just. Now you fear no injustice. You always fight for justice. That's another value. God is all-seeing. You don't try to bribe or to brown nose or to suck up or to try to get any sort of benefit from any power because you know Allah is the ultimate power and the only power that matters. So it renders you with integrity, with confidence, with boldness, with courage, with good character. So many things come from this first value, the oneness of God. But justice itself is a value that Islam, we can write volumes about, a core Islamic value. Compassion is another one. Forgiveness, by the way. It's something that Christians sometimes assume as sort of their creation or their invention. But the Quran is so strong on the value of forgiveness as the highest value that any human can attain in any conflict. And there's so much beauty and there's so much values that we don't quite respect enough ourselves to put to the fore. If we don't respect our own material, if we don't revere and elevate our own material, no one will do it for us and no one will see its beauty. So it starts at home. That is Islamic identity. That is Muslim identity. It isn't, I cover my hair. No. Consequence of one of your values, which is modesty. Modesty is the value. Men should have it too. They have a different way of implementing it. But this value is for all human beings. It's a prophetic value. And it's not just in clothes. It's in character. It's in your approach to other human beings. And most of all, it's in your approach to Allah. The humility that one should have before Allah, that value, if you think about it, any value you have, Allah has more. Any value you can claim that is good, Allah has better. If you're kind, Allah is kinder. If you're loving, Allah is more loving. If you're forgiving, Allah is more forgiving. If you're generous, Allah is more generous. The only value Allah left to humans to be the greatest in is humility. That is the only one left for us uniquely to be. If the true greatness of human beings is greatness in humility. There's no other greatness that we can achieve because Allah will always be greater. So the modesty and the humility that comes from our core values can be implemented in so many different ways. Hijab is just one, but we make that, again, symbolism as the story, and we allow others to run with that narrative. There's no difference between a hijabi and non-hijabi in their everyday life. Why do we create it as a category as if it's a different, sect in Islam or something? I have a sister who wears the hijab, a sister who doesn't. And you know this because you know it in your own communities. There are those who do, those who don't. Regardless of what you believe, modesty is the value that we all have to believe in. How you implement it, we can debate that. I happen to believe hijab is written, upon us, but at the end of the day, we don't want to get sucked into that little detail. That is a very low priority, the implementation, that little debate, and this big debate that's been had all over the world endlessly. And now Americans who know nothing about Islam are hijab, jihad. They're talking about things they don't understand. And it's our problem. It's our fault. We haven't let the world know our priorities. Sharia law. You heard that one? Sharia law. I've been pulled into so many interviews about Sharia law. You know what my answer is? I don't want to talk about it. I don't even want you to understand it. It's not the point. The point is for you to understand the values first. Imagine if someone dealing with anti-Semitism allows a non-Jew to start debating them about the Torah as a way to understand anti-Semitism, whether it exists or not. It has nothing to do with it. Okay, that level of detail is only important if you want to assume the faith. If you want to be a Muslim, go ahead, take a class, start from A, B, C, get all the way to K, L, whatever, and that's maybe where Sharia is, and then you'll understand what it means. But you start with that, you're being facetious, you're being condescending, you're being dishonest, you're being disingenuous, and we'll never get anywhere regardless of what answer I give you, regardless of what answer I give you. So we're not even going to have that conversation. We're going to talk about what I want you to talk about, which is the core of this faith. That's what brought me to it. That's what brought the world to it, and that's what defines it first and foremost. Sharia is a beautiful thing when you understand it, but you will never understand it unless you understand the values. So we have to promote Islam through its values. That's number one. That's its identity. And then secondly, we need to understand that America is wide enough to assume any core set of values as American. And there's no contradiction therein. So as you build your institutions, as you build your schools, as you raise your children, as you build your projects within the institutions, take pride in the fact that Allah put you here. You're part of this society. You're American is no different than you being Turkish or you being Somali or you being, it's just another identity in the world. It's a time and place. But humans are humans, and these core values of Islam remain the same. And the challenge is, how do they apply here and now? We talked about the gambling. What about the drinking, for example? We always talk about it from the context of it's haram. Well, that's very nice, thank you. But that's not how Islam talks about it. Islam talks about it. The human being has been dignified. The human being deserves to live a happy, wholesome, healthy life. A family should live in a way that is, inshallah, wholesome and healthy and successful. Anything that challenges that, anything that hurts that is a problem. And when we have data and logic and anecdote and history and science and everything under the sky that suggests that this endemic of alcoholism is destructive to not only a person's ability to function, but that also brings about consequences like domestic abuse, failed families, drunk driving, in which fatalities occur, innocent individuals that have done nothing wrong, their lives are taken, their limbs are taken, theft, child abuse, everything you can imagine, right? Crimes because of this thing. Then we say we need to deal with it. Not to punish, not to say I'm better than you, but to say I love you, I want you to be better, I want to help you, I want to save that future kid, hopefully from not being the next victim, future victim of abuse, this woman from being the future victim of domestic abuse, this person from being the future victim of a drunk driving accident that didn't need to happen. These are all things that are good for society. That's what Islam is about. وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى. And come together for goodness. That's Islam in a nutshell. Come together for goodness. So that is the substance. It isn't the symbolism. Don't give me these little symbolic things. This is haram, this is halal, this is what we wear, this is what we eat. That's what you do if you're a tribalistic little religion that happened, arbitrarily and randomly. But there's always a beauty and a logic and a wisdom to everything that we have in our deen. And if we don't talk about those things, we shouldn't talk about the consequences. The consequences come second. The implementation comes second. The values come first. That is the Muslim identity. That is the Muslim identity. And when we realize that, we realize we share this identity. It's not exclusive to us. I mean, as a whole it is, but there are many elements of it that we may share with other good human beings from other traditions. And that's beautiful. And so we can actually coalesce. If I have people from the Christian faith, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, whatever it is, and on this particular project, I want to coalesce and work together on this common goal of saving families and children and women and men from this disease, great. Homelessness, we mentioned gambling, many other types of issues that hurt this society. They may not hurt Kuwaitis, but I'm not living in Kuwait. What hurts Americans? What can Islam do to make this society a better society? We get into these little conversations about communism and capitalism and Islamism. Again, some symbolic, little rhetorical conversations that are useless, a waste of time. For us, there's a core value: justice, social justice, economic justice. And we oppose abuse and manipulation and taking advantage of someone. And so when we stand against riba, it isn't just an arbitrary haram, usually. It is the suggestion that the big guy should not take advantage of the little guy's weakness or vulnerability, a word that's very popular in America. And that's a good thing. We don't want someone who's vulnerable to be abused, manipulated by someone who's stronger. That's the point here. And you measure that into everything that every Islamic values that pertains to the economy comes from that point of justice and protecting human beings from being abused. And then charity comes along for good measure, that even after you protect, then even the stronger, in this case the richer, goes out of their way to support someone who's weaker, in this case poorer. That's the message of Jesus. That's the message of Muhammad. That's the message of Islam. That's a beautiful thing. We need to bring that as our Islamic economy. It isn't some random Islamic banking, something with an Islamic name, Amana, Amuna, Imana, whatever. That's not the point. It's not to stake our little bank and put a little flag on it. So the more universal, the more applicable, the more people can relate to it, and the more bold we are in not just bubbling down to Muslims and creating a little Muslim spaces, but engaging society in order to solve these problems. And we say as Muslims, yes, I'm doing it as a Muslim. I'm not doing it as a nice person. I'm doing it as a Muslim. Then that identity is not only not contradicting, but complementing and empowering this American Muslim identity. And we can help make this country is full of challenges, just like any other country in the world, full of challenges. And few are genuinely working to help people overcome these problems. Few. There's always some self-interest. We come from a space, a religion, that doesn't put self-interest into the equation when it comes to service. Those of you who are part of service work, you know what I'm talking about, understand this very well. You understand the sacrifices, you understand what it means to address Allah. You're not addressing other humans. You don't even want thanks. You don't want credit. These two things are very important, because when you don't care about credit, you don't care about gratitude from human beings, you only care about Allah, who will never forget and will never not know what you've done, will always give you the credit, always have the gratitude, huwa shakur. Then you've won, you've already won, you've already gotten the best credit and gratitude you can get. And you work hard regardless. And you help people regardless. That is a very powerful way to do it. That's the Muslim way. So I had a different kind of conversation, thinking we had youth, but since we have parents and we have some youth, and this applies to them too, I thought I would go in that direction of going back to the definition of what Muslim identity really is. It's value-based. And what American identity really is, it's what you make it. And then how those two can work together in order to bring goodness to society. That is the real point. It's not to Islamize. It's not to change the law. It's not to change the dress code for the sake of it, so they can look like me. It is not just dawah for the sake of dawah, so I can, get a house point or win one for the team. But it's to change problems into solutions and to amplify human beings to the dignity that Allah promised them. That is the point of what Islam does in any society. Now, the consequence of that, inshallah, is that people see the beauty of it, maybe choose to be a part of it. Wonderful. Wonderful. And it's happened in history, time and time and time again. I don't see why it wouldn't happen. No problems with that. Well, we welcome that. But it shouldn't be about this egotistical, look, I'll close with this. There are only two religions in the world, truly, right? There's the religion of God and the religion of ego. And the religion of God has always been one religion, since Adam. There's nothing that Muhammad came with, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in terms of creed, and I challenge it. I challenge the top sheikhs in the world. I've done this, and I've gotten no response. There's nothing that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has brought in the in his message, in his work, even in the Quran that he received, that Allah delivered to him, that was not already known. That was not already known. Every element of creed in Islam was already known before Islam. The oneness of God, was that known before Muhammad or not? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It was. The fact that prophets are sent, was that known before Muhammad or was that news? It was known. The fact that there were angels, the fact that books were delivered from Allah with messengers, we knew the Bible, we knew the Torah, etc., Injil, Torah. The fact that there is good and evil, the fact that there's sin, the fact that there's heaven and hell, the fact that there's an akhirah, the fact that there is judgment day. Well, that's it. These are the core creedal beliefs of a Muslim. All of that stuff was known before the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, what does that tell us? It tells us two things. A, the Prophet never claimed this was new. That's number one. But what it tells us is Islam was always there. Islam was never accept the notion that Muhammad is the founder of Islam, or Islam began in the 7th century. Islam began with the creation of humanity. Adam sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the first Muslim. Every prophet that came after him was a Muslim, that he believed in all of these things. Every great woman of Islam, Maryam and others, were Muslim in that sense. So I say Islam between quotations earlier because we tend to speak about Islam today as that movement of the 7th century. But Islam truly should be spoken about as this, since day one, core beliefs that was crystallized by the seal of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad, and in which this book was the final installation. It wasn't the first, it was the final. And it wasn't given to inform. We were informed. It was given to remind. And it says that about itself. Tadhkira, which in Arabic, in English means reminder. That's what the Quran says. Tadhkira, فَمَنْ شَاءَ ذَكَرَ. So who wants to remember shall remember. So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came and he sealed with this message, but all the prophets before him had the same core beliefs and they've never changed. That is the religion of God. It's always been the same. Then there is the religion of ego. Now the religion of ego, I said I'll close with this, is anything else. But mind you, these are not distinct spaces, meaning there are many in Islam, many Muslims, many shuyukh, many ulama, many of us who may fall into the religion of ego while we claim to be in the religion of God. And there are many in the Jewish tradition or the Christian or any other who may be either here or there, even as they claim whatever they claim. If you have someone in Israel today who is singing the praises of God as loud as they can on the Temple Mount, while dancing in happiness to the tune or to the sound of the destruction of Palestinian villages, is this person truly addressing Allah or addressing their own ego with Allah and God and godliness as a veneer? When you have a Muslim who says all Christians are going to hell, all Christians are going to hell. Last week I have a neighbor, his name is Gordon. His son just died, Allah yarhamah, 23 years old. Motorcycle accident. The nicest neighbor, beautiful man. And his son was a wonderful guy. And I met him hours after this happened, hours. I didn't know. I was walking down the street and he was standing on the corner. There's a lot of people there. And I asked and they said, so I hugged him and he was smiling. And then some tears fell from his face, from his eyes. And he said, just hug your kids and take care of them. This can happen to anyone in any moment. And then he said, I said, well, stay strong. He said, God let me borrow Jason for 23 years and he has decided to take him back and he will always be kinder and more merciful for him than me. I'm just going to miss him. Now tell me that's not a mu'min. Tell me that's not a mu'min. A lot of Muslims won't say that. We're too hung up, too strung up on these dividers, these lines. Let Allah decide who goes where, who is what. But remember, there's only two religions, the religion of God and the religion of ego. And within some other religion that you think is not the religion of God, you might find God. And within your own religion, and I say this to everybody, not just to us, to Jews, to Christians, within your own religion, even the top sheikh, the top scholar, the top whoever leader you may think is the greatest religious person, if they fall to ego, they're out of God. That is a divider. It's always been. It's always been. Read the Quran, read the stories. We can have a million lectures on this stuff, and I can show you story by story. It's always been the battle between God and ego. Within us, it's the same battle. Sometimes we worship Allah. Many times we worship our ego. When we're angry with God for not getting what we want, we're not trusting that God knows better. We are just so hung up on our own ego and what it wants right here, right now. So my dear brothers and sisters, I promise this will be the last point, so I'll make it the last point, and I'll open it up to questions and answers or comments. And if you'd like to facilitate, or if you just, let people raise their hands, we're happy to deal with that, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.
Can I ask the first question?
Yeah.
Okay, I do have a question. So we have both parents and our youth here in this audience. So let's try to cover both. So I'm a parent, as a parent, so how can the parents maintain open communication, as Quran suggests, to everyone with their children, and in fact with anybody, but specifically within their families, to address issues surrounding Islamophobia and discrimination in the society, but at the same time we have a duty on ourselves, our shoulders as parents, to nurture the connection of our kids with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and with their religion, and encouraging them to be active, engaging members in their societies, both Muslim society and whatever society you might include, American society, European society. So could you share some guidance based on your experience, as well as maybe some role models in the history that we could look up to anytime we forget the guidance?
Yeah, thank you. Let me begin with a short answer, and then we can sort of elaborate. So two things. One is expose them to anything and everything that is age appropriate, but let them know that Islam is the best thing. Meaning, don't shelter, don't let your children not know that there are these possibilities in the world, because they will find out at some point. And again, this is age appropriate. So based on, but by the time they're in college, for example, they should know that exactly what's out there in the world. You don't want somebody who's a senior in high school to be so sheltered, and you think you're doing a good job because they're doing what you want, because they don't know any other way. They don't know any other alternative. And then they go to college and suddenly they're subjected to all of these other ways of doing things or thinking about things. And I've seen this so many times. And now there is no way for you to rein them in, because they were never prepared. Instead, from a young age appropriate, step by step. You don't want to talk about something that's, for an 18-year-old with an 8-year-old, but step by step, let them know what's out there in the world. It's okay. It's okay. Don't shelter. Instead, give a critical mind. Allow the child to have a critical mind so that they know this exists, but I don't want it, and why I don't want it. My father, Allah yarhamu, Allah bless his memory, he was very good at doing this with us. He never told me, don't know about this, or let me close your ears or your eyes. But he would always tell me, this is why this is bad. This is why we have something better. Here's the way you can critique this thing. Here's the logic. Here are the life examples. Here's the history. And here's also the same things that you can bring to understand why Islam does it better, why Islam is better for you. So in conclusion, how Islam is valuable. Not how Islam is mine. I'm your father. This is my thing. You should do it because it's mine. No. Because it's valuable. The kid, the child, has to see it, has to feel it. When they do, there's a much greater chance that even without you, they will make the right choice, value themselves even more and more, so long as they know they're looking for it. That's what you give them, the ability to look and appreciate value. Then, inshallah, it's not only something they'll do without you, but maybe even do better without you, versus just do it because, right? And don't shelter, because they're going to find out, they're going to know this is America. Sheltering has created, in my opinion, infantile Muslims. I've seen kids who are older and who act in such a naive and they set themselves up for being exploited and bullied, and at best, if they don't fall for what is wrong, they become depressed, they have self-doubt, they feel weaker in society, they don't know how to deal with it, and they seclude. These are people who've memorized the Quran, these people who've led prayers in Taraweeh. We cannot create weaklings. We cannot create weaklings in the name of protection. We have to create strong human beings. And strong human beings need to know what's up. They need to know what's up and how to deal with it.
Thank you very much. That's a great answer. So I want to turn back to the audience. Any questions, please raise your hands. And okay, let's here, let me.
So thank you very much. Actually, I'm new here for 1 year. I'm in the US. So I just wonder, for example, can we celebrate Halloween or Christmas with our family? So we always, knew that there are, Islamic holidays, but they are kind of American holidays. So, for example, I have a little kid, and he always asks me, I want to kind of celebrate Halloween or something. He's just 5 years old. We are kind of, as I said, we are new. So we are trying to say that we have our own holidays like Eid. So, what should be our position for this?
Yeah.
Maybe I can add to it while walking. So I think it can tie in a great way to the identity, the Muslim identity, and these holidays, not just Halloween. We could probably add other holidays. Because there's still confusion out there. Some people are completely against it. Some people are, oh, it's okay to integrate. So where do we draw a line? How do we go about it?
Can I be very honest with everybody? Is that going to be okay? Reasons why people do it. And I hate the reasons why people don't do it. The reasons why people do it is to integrate. That's a terrible reason. What does that mean? What are you integrating into? And why can't someone integrate into you? Why do I have to integrate into someone? You know what I mean? Like, do they have something better than I have? Are they better than me? Like, what does that mean? Integration doesn't mean just being like someone else just because they're the majority or they have more power. Integration means that you don't stick out just for the sake of sticking out. You stop trying to make yourself so different just for the sake of being different, and you let yourself be part naturally of the community you're in. So I don't like that reason of, for doing it. And then the reason not doing it also I don't like, it's lest we be seen as this or that, or so that I can be more religious, or it's a more religious thing to do. Not really. No, nobody goes to hell for dressing up as Paw Patrol. I don't think. So I hate both reasons, to be honest with you. I think to me, it's kind of like, it's one of those things where, should I run a marathon? Should I take a walk in the park? It comes down to why you're doing it and how you're doing it and to what extent you're doing it. So I have no problem with the concept of someone dressing up as a cute character to feel good about themselves and have a laugh. We need to stop making non-haram things haram. That's a problem, okay? But if there's any element of this notion of having to succumb to the larger culture just so the other kids can think I'm cool, or I remember when I was in high school and I never got what the prom is about, and I never really understood the prom. Like, is that a wedding, guys? No, it's not a wedding. So why are we dressing like we're going to a wedding? Like, why? So what are we doing? I never understood it. I'd come from Egypt 2 years before that, so I was kind of new. I never understood it. But I realized that everybody was doing it. Prom is this thing that people do in high school. where a guy asks a girl out for a dance and they dress up essentially like bride and groom and they have a dance and whatever. So I remember thinking, okay, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't, it doesn't make sense to me. And the only friend I had at the time felt so embarrassed for me that he felt compelled to tell everybody, Ahmed has to go to, he made up the story, Ahmed has to go to Michigan to visit his aunt, so he can't come to the prom. So the moment I heard him say that, I said, whoa, stop. No, he's lying to you. I'm here in Chicago. I don't have an aunt in Michigan. I'm not going to the prom because I don't understand why I should go to the prom. And unless I do, I'm willing to go. Again, it's not like I just want to be different. Convince me, compel me, let me understand its logic. And maybe if I buy into it, I'll do it. But nobody ever did. The only reason why, if the entire world did one way and I felt it wasn't the right way, I would not do it. And that's what I want to teach children. It's okay. That makes you the cool kid. Because I know what this was about. It was about me being uncool. But I was trying to, even then, send the message that, no, in my book, being cool is having the guts, let's say guts, to make your own decisions. And everybody else who's a lemming, who's just following the trend, that's the height of being uncool, in my opinion. You see a value in it, you're not going to go too far religiously. You have to do it every year. I'll go further than that. Some people here will disagree with me, but sometimes I put up a Christmas tree in my house. I don't see it as a Christmas tree. I see it as a cultural thing. It's a pretty little thing. I grew up in England. It was all over the place. I like it. It reminds me of England. I put some lights on it. But for us, it has no religious connotation. My kids know exactly what they're talking about when they talk about religion. They know Christianity. They know what I think of it. They know Islam, what I think of it. They pray. They read the Quran. They know what the tree is about. They know its history, which preceded Christianity. They know it looks a little cute with the lights. And that's the extent. Maybe 1 year we'll do it. Maybe 3 years we won't. It will never be religious. It will never be we have to do it. People tell me you celebrate Christmas. And no, I celebrate Eid. Every year I have to do Eid. And it's min manasik Allah. It's from the rights of God. But this thing, it's like turning on a lamp or putting a flower or something. It's not something I have to do. It's not religiously observed. So Halloween should not be religiously observed. You have to do. But if you do it, and if you do it for the right reasons, just to make your kid a little happy, and they know the extent of it, that's fine by me.
Okay. I don't know if I can. Please closer. I think we can make it work, so I don't have to repeat the question. You talked about Allah.
Yeah.
You talked about Allah promising a way of living.
Yeah.
It's like this with dignity, and you added a few more things too.
Yeah.
What do you mean by promising? And also, what do you mean when you say dignity too? Can you like elaborate on that?
Yeah. Yes. He's asking about what I meant when I said God promised humans dignity, and what does promise mean? What does dignity mean? So basically, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written certain things upon himself. He's written justice upon himself. God is capable of being unjust. I mean, he's God, right? So technically, and this is a big debate since the early days, can God create a rock so big that he can't carry it? And if you say, yes, he can, so God, certain things he can't do. If you say, no, he can't, they'll say the same thing, right? So these are philosophical debates, but God has written certain things upon himself. One of them is justice. He has written justice upon him. He has held himself to justice. He has also said that he has given all human beings, not all Muslims, all human beings, dignity. Karram Allahu wajha al-insan. He has dignified the face of the human. And he says that he creates the human in the best of forms. Fi ahsani taqweem. But then he says, for many, they return to him, they come back to him, the lowest of the low. So out of the box. So what we're talking about here is out of the box. Out of the box, everybody has full dignity from God. And God has created everybody in the best of forms. Now, how we live our lives, if we live our lives in his path, in the religion of God, not the religion of ego, to purify, not to contaminate. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا قَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. God talks about the soul. The soul can go in either direction. There's no good soul, no bad soul. Every soul has the potential for both. Every soul at any moment in time has the potential of both. Meaning, even if you have a soul that has the potential of both, and one day you get it right, the next day you may not. So every day it has that potential. So consistently, and this is why the Quran is tazkirah, a reminder. It's actually strong. If it was an informer, it'd be a one-time deal, but it's a reminder because every day you have to renew. It's all about renewal. And so Allah says, for those who live in the religion of God, not ego, and those who purify their soul every day, not contaminate it, they will return back dignified and the best of forms. But those who do the opposite consistently, they reach a point of such lowliness that God says the lowest of the low, asfal as-safilin. So what I say is, remember, all human beings start that way. So if somebody is in a certain point where we think they're not that way, let's remember how Allah intended for them to be, or wanted them to be, or is asking them to be. And so what is my role? Now, again, Allah can do it all, but Allah has delegated to me something. He said, will you help them? Will you condemn them? Will you not care? Or will you help them achieve this promise or this intention that they were created for this? Which would be more pleasing to, let's put it this way. Which do you think would be more pleasing to Allah? This is the possession of Allah. This is the creation of Allah. And He created this person, whoever this person is, in this beautiful way. And this person has lost their way so badly. The owner of this person, do you think He would appreciate you more if you just push this thing over the edge, this creature over the edge, let it lose its way more, not care about it, or help bring it back to the way God said he should be or she should be? Just think what's more pleasing to Allah. And we will understand that this isn't about the religious Olympics. It is about Muslims versus non-Muslims, or we're saved, everybody's lost, and we're going to Jannah, everybody's going to Jahannam. I cannot see Islam this way. I cannot see Islam in this miserly way. This is a generous religion. What is the first value Allah said of Himself in the Quran? Anybody know? The first description. Before that, in the actual ayat, you're correct in sense of this is the beginning of but in the actual content of the ayat, because this applies to every surah. And Rahman Rahim, by the way, benevolent, right? Compassionate. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what's the first surah? Iqra. Okay, what can somebody say the first part of it? Akram. That was the first. He could have said many things. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, khalaqa al-insana min alaq, iqra wa rabbuka al-akram, rabbuka al-akram. He could have said anything. He could have said anything. You're angry God, you're strong God, you're big God, you're this God. He has many, many values, many beautiful values. He said the most generous. The first value He identified Himself with is the most generous. Now we really have to reflect on that. Generosity, the generosity of God. And then we as humans, if God is so generous, how can we be so miserly and claim to be of the religion of God? If God, for example, knows that there are certain people who are doing such evil in the world, yet He's patient and lets them be until a certain time, of course, when His, wa'ad, His promise falls, right? Justice is served. But this period of giving them a chance. So in our situation, if someone is erring, and they're erring out of ignorance even, how can we not have some generosity of spirit to say, maybe it's my responsibility, maybe as a fellow human being, I should help relieve this person of an eternity of damnation by giving them some guidance, some light, like I was given, like my parents were given, and then they passed on to me, and my grandfather, my great-grandfather. You know what I'm saying? So we all have that responsibility together. We shouldn't see ourselves as teams. This team is going to Jannah, this team is going to Nar, but rather have this love and compassion for all human beings, because that, I think, would be more pleasing to God. I'm not trying to be nice. I'm not trying to be the guy who's interfaith. I'm not even an interfaith person, to be honest with you, in the traditional sense. But I really am saying this genuinely. I think Allah genuinely would want that. So how come in Islam, how come in modern Islam, in the way we talk about Islam, we don't talk that way? Where do we go wrong? Why do we talk about tribes and teams,
I think you opened up a at least a couple of windows
Mhm.
in my mind. I can continue through those, but I want to ask if anybody else has any questions. Raise hands. I don't see anybody. Okay, I see one person. Could you please come closer to the microphone? Try to come close also. Yes, without breaking anything. Okay, let's do it here.
So a few months back, we were speaking with a few friends about a certain issue. Let's say you go out with some non-Muslim friends and you guys go grab food, and then you say, I'm gonna pay for it, and they start ordering, let's say, something with pork or something that's haram. Would it be an issue to pay for that, and would it be okay or not? So that's a little bit of concern we have.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. If it were me, I would say, sorry, guys, I can't pay for that. And I'll say why. I'll say, in my religion, pork is something we don't eat, we don't consume, we don't encourage others to consume. I get you a burger, get you anything else. Make it lighthearted. I'm not going to make it like a preachy thing, but I'll let them know the reason. It's important for us to not shy away from our identity and our values, even in these small things. People respect you for it. You know who's the most respected Muslim in the United States of America? Muhammad Ali, right? The boxer. And you know why? Because at a time when everybody was trying to dilute their identities and fit in, he was proud, loud, owned it, and talked back. But he did it in a smart way, and he did it in a way that was actually loving. It seemed like it was arrogant. It seemed like it was combative. But if you actually watch his work, this guy's a genius. He was actually very loving. He was very educational. He was teaching people, and he was getting them to break the ice and understand more about our faith and our tradition. So I think every Muslim, every young Muslim should grow up and learn to be unapologetic and proud, not in a showy way. Again, we never want to be the religion of ego, but for the sake of God, to let other people know about this beautiful faith, you have to take it and own it proudly, even in the small things. But I wouldn't do it in such a way that is, I'm different from you, I'm better than you, or it's just this arbitrary thing that happens, and then leave question marks in everybody's mind. Kind of own the situation, the way Muhammad Ali would have, right?
I think that's a great answer. So I got reminded of this talk one time by an imam when you were talking about the religion of God and the religion of the ego. And this imam was talking about and asked everybody why Iblis, Shaitan, was expelled.
Right.
And then he explained, he said, well, Iblis got expelled because of his ego, because of nothing else, but because of his ego. And because he thought he was made from fire, not from clay or soil, and he thought that he was superior to Adam or to Bani Adam, and he didn't like that, and that was the only reason, show off of the kibr and arrogance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expelled him.
Absolutely.
So that, I think, was probably the starting point of what you said, the religion of ego or the religion of God. So that opened up this other window in my head. So the ayah, inna akramakum inda Allahi atqakum. So everybody is equal, nobody is superior among themselves except, or in front of Allah, except whoever is more mindful, whoever has more taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's number one. But then it led me to the other ayah, shu'uba wa qaba'ila lita'arafu. So we got all created in different groups, various groups, so that we may foster understanding and we get to know one another as we belong into different tribes or different millah, right? Different groups. However, now my question to you is, it brings all of these terminologies. So you talked about integration. It also alludes to this understanding of, okay, is one millah less of something, qualified of something, then we all get integrated into something? Okay, so this is one question. Second is assimilation. So some say, okay, we're not going to get assimilated, we will get integrated. We all coexist without really changing anything that we do, of living together without really sacrificing anything. It's probably a low question, but if you were to try to explain
No,
it.
you know, the gist of the question, I think, is really the gist of this whole interfaith debate versus, I don't want to say Salafi, but sort of the Muslims who believe that it's a joke to kind of like water down your religion by sitting with other people who don't believe this, don't believe that, you know, and sort of, so if we integrate, if we do interfaith work, are we diluting our religion? Are we looking for acceptance, etc.? You know, this whole debate. And I think the answer to it is, and this goes to integration assimilation, but the answer to it is, we always have to be unapologetic and clear with everyone, but it doesn't mean that as a result, we should cut ourselves from anyone. Meaning, it's not my job as someone who wants to be nice or someone who wants to be generous, all the things I said earlier, it's not my job to change core values or beliefs that I have in order for you to feel that you can relate to me more. That's not what I'm talking about. I want to be always ultra clear about my values, ultra clear about my beliefs. I'm going to say this between parentheses, whether you like it or not. But I'm going to come back and say, I'm not trying to spite you. That's not my intention. As a matter of fact, if you feel hard done by this, I'm going to put an arm around you lovingly and try to get you through it. You see the strength in that? Like, I love you. I'm not going to change the truth for you because I love you. That's part of the love. If you think you love someone enough to bow to them even a little bit, that's back to the ego. And it's worse than ego. It's fear, it's cowardice. That's not worship of Allah. You always have to worship Allah. And Allah's truth does not change. So you always speak the truth clearly, regardless of the consequences, regardless of what anybody thinks about it. As someone who's tried to do that, it's cost me. You maybe know a little bit about that. Others know a little bit about that. But at the end of the day, I don't think you can be a true Muslim if you understand that beautiful term, that beautiful classification, unless you commit yourself to that point. And then after you do it, don't feel bold and brave and great and heroic, but have the generosity then to extend your hand over to the person who might be offended or hurt or not like it or be an enemy and say, can I help you? Can I help you get through it? Can I help you actually understand why this is a good thing? To give you an example that's so abstract, I've taken, and this is live, I don't care, I've taken a position against certain people in the world, right? Who are very loved and very, respected, certain Muslim leaders. In my own community that I come from, which is a very conventional, traditionalist Muslim community, for them, you can do whatever the hell you want to do, you can say whatever you want to say, but you can't touch this person. This person is untouchable. This leader can do no wrong. But in my humble estimation, and again, I'm not saying I'm the smartest or I'm the best, but I see data, I see reports that there has been some injustice at the hands of this individual. I cannot then say, let me look the other way, because when it happens at the hands of others, I speak out, and they speak out with me, and they applaud me, and I'm a hero, and I'm the dark horse, and the red carpet is, rolled out for me at Masajid. But I can't be that person who does it for the attention, for the applause, but when I'm going to lose something, then I stop doing it, or I give myself an excuse. We're very good at giving ourselves excuses. I have to confront and say I'm going to give it the same attention and the same strength of words as I do when it's, popular. And then face the consequences. And the consequences may be excommunication to a degree, meaning they push you away from certain spaces that you were once welcomed in. They may label you a certain way. They may mischaracterize your intentions. They may even call you corrupt, that you're getting money from someone to say this. All that shouldn't matter and doesn't matter. You take that position, you make the strong arguments, you bring the data. We're always data-driven. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. It's in the Quran. تَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. Ally yourself with truth. Truth is not just true concepts, but defined and documented things. So data is part of truth. Muslims should always be data-driven as part of their commitment to truth. So I bring the Human Rights Report, the Amnesty International report, data. And it's not to win the argument, because that's the truth. Independent, neutral individuals have shown this to be true. People that you've trusted on others, why can't you trust them here? And so once you do that, once I've done that, people would then think, it follows logically that I take a corner and now I'm in this corner, I have this label, they're in this corner, they have that label. No, that's not how I think as a Muslim, because I'm not of the religion of ego. So once I've taken this position, I've not compromised on it, I've made it clear, the same person who's done that, me, will then turn around and say, I still love you, I still have no problem with you, and I want you to understand why you're wrong and why it's important for you to be critical of anything that's wrong, including if it's from your own brother or your own father. That's the words of the Prophet. He said that about his daughter. If his daughter did something wrong, he would punish her. He would say that it was wrong. So we continue to engage. And if these people have a problem and have something in their heart against me for doing this or saying this, I can't reciprocate that. I can't. I will continue to feel love for them and genuine care as a brother or sister, that they may see the point. And if they don't, they don't. And if they do, then great. So there shouldn't be ego in saying the truth, but there should be boldness and there should be unapologetic commitment. And these are two different things.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brother Ahmed. I want to ask one last time to audience if there are any last questions. It looks like there's one. Let's make that a last question. Brother, could you come close to the microphone?
Hello. I have a question. What's the best way you would say to talk to a person about Islam where they're like lightly interested in without putting any ego on them, like without like kind of saying like, I guess like your religion is wrong or anything like that? What's the best way to come upon them with something like?
Yeah. Thank you, brother. It's a very deep question. You cannot, let me put it this way. I've always said this, but I'll say it again. You can never serve a community you don't love. You can never change a heart you don't care for. You can never uplift a person you don't actually value. So meaning we can't drive by dawah. Drive by dawah, it's like drive by shooting. You just kind of spray the dawah as you run along. Pass out that flyer. You have to love the person. Why is this important? Because when you care for the person genuinely, you actually want to listen to them. You want to know where they're at in life. You want to know what their challenges are. And when you do that, they feel you. They feel your. And this is what the Muslims did in the early days. This is what the dawah, the true dawah, princes and princesses of dawah did. They cared about human beings. They got to know them, and people trusted them. And then they were able to show them the beauty of that religion. Just show it. It's not about do this, do that. It's not about this is wrong, this is right. It's about walking through how there's beauty that can help make one's life more fulfilling, more healthy. And that is something we have to understand ourselves first. We can't give something that we don't possess. So we have to enrich ourselves with it. And this is where the humility comes in. We have to spend some time to build up our understanding of how this faith helps human beings be more human. People always ask me, and this is a debate people have, are you a human first or are you a Muslim first? These philosophical questions. And a lot of Muslims will say, I'm a Muslim first. No, I'm a human being first. I have no shame in saying that. And I can prove it. If you poked me when I was a baby, I'd cry. I wouldn't say Allahu Akbar. So I have no problem. I have no shame in embracing my nature, that I'm a human being first. Now, it doesn't mean, this does not belittle Islam, because as a human being, I need Islam to refine my humanity. Islam does not give you humanity. Birth does. Creation does. What Islam does, so by virtue, because if we say that, this is where the dehumanization of non-Muslims come from. This is where the Taliban and those types of people, their philosophy, their theology, is where it comes from. The notion that non-Muslims are somehow less of a human being. No, it's not true. It was never true. As a matter of fact, even the Prophet said, the best of you in Jahiliyyah, which means before Islam, is the best of you after. So there's an essence to a human that comes with birth anyway. But what Islam does absolutely is refine that humanity, meaning whatever animalistic pieces we have, it can help rain down, and whatever higher value elements we have, it can help elevate. And that's why it's a constant exercise, a constant progress. It's not one. Islam is not a pill. Every day you do something. We pray 5 times a day. We fast 30 days every year. We do Hajj once a year. There's always repetition because we always need to train, because at any moment in time you can fall back. It's not one-time pill. So this growth and this purification happens from a place of understanding our relationship with God and being happy about it. If you're not happy about it, we're doing something wrong. If Islam is a burden, we're doing something wrong. If it's sad and depressing and a chore, we're doing something wrong. We have to get to a point where it's something you look forward to, something you want, because you know it's good for you, because you know it's going to help you. It's the best self-help. I'm not saying this to you in regards to your question, but I'm piggybacking off your question to all of us and to myself first and foremost, that we have to find in Islam something that makes us want to come to it and love it and look forward to it. Because imagine if it's always something you want to run away from. Then it's going to be down to your patience and how much you can, take pain, because it's painful to do something you don't want to do. But we have to get to a point where we can make it. The Prophet used to say to Bilal, Prophet ﷺ used to say Bilal, radiallahu anhu, his black companion. He was the mu'adhin, right? He used to do the adhan for him. And when he wouldn't tell him, start the prayer because we have to do it, the chore, kind of language, he'd say, Arihna biha ya Bilal. Bilal, go make the adhan so we can rest. Let us rest. For him, prayer was a rest. Was a release, a relief. He would say, Bilal, go, let's relieve ourselves. Let's get some release. Go make the adhan. He saw prayer as an opportunity to release tension, and stress, and anxiety. That's why the Prophet ﷺ, his prayer was of this nature, because he saw in it a value that made his life better. This is the man who taught us. Now, how are we here today teaching our kids that you're going to if you don't do it, and whatever happens to you if you don't do it, and we're creating this stress and this tension, this burden. So in da'wah, to make it a long story short, we have to first love the human being, embrace the human being, more than we even love the notion of da'wah and winning one for the team. You care about them, because sometimes they're not even at the right moment in time. You're patient. You love them. You let them be, right? And then secondly, when we do talk about it, we show it, and we show what makes their lives better, not just what you have to do. Forget what you have to do. How can you make your life better? When I made da'wah to my wife, who alhamdulillah is a committed Muslim, it was all about talking about, how Islam makes a husband a better husband and a wife a better wife. Back when we were courting, this is the stuff I was talking to her. I said, I'm a Muslim. I'm interested in you. I want to let you know my values. And our entire courting process was da'wah. And I never said you have to be a Muslim for me to marry you. Between you and me, that was a condition in my own heart. And I know some people don't have this condition because technically you don't need to have it. But for me, that condition was there. I believe a man and a woman should share the same values fully. But I didn't say that. And alhamdulillah, when she finally made, her declaration of faith, I was so relieved because I didn't want to marry her, and it gave me that opportunity. But it was for the right reasons. It was for her understanding how this made her life better. And that was the da'wah process. How it makes a man a better man, a woman a better woman, a husband a better husband, a wife a better wife, a teacher a better teacher, how it refines our humanity.
Brother Ahmed, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jazakumullahu khairan. In conclusion, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to gather here on a beautiful Friday night. And we pray that the knowledge we gathered here and the inspirations we have gained today will benefit us in this world and also will benefit us in akhirah. Allahumma ameen. So let's finish with dua if that's okay with you. Ameen. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم ارزقنا حفظ المرسلين وإلهام الأنبياء وفهم الأولياء بكرمك يا أكرم الأكرمين وبرحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم ربنا زدنا علما وإيمانا ويقينا وتسليما وتفويضا إلى لقائك اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا شر ما قضيت آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين الفاتحة. Brothers and sisters, thank you for joining again and have a great evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We ended up having